Members of Council, members of Senate, Chairperson of Senate, the Principal and Vice Chancellor, members of the University academic community, colleagues, our students, and ladies and gentlemen, Sanbona. A very good afternoon to all of you. I am proud and pleased to welcome you to Prof. Prudence Khumalo's inaugural lecture. Let me take the opportunity to acknowledge Prof. M.T. Mokhale, who's the Executive Dean of the College of Economic and Management Sciences, his deputy, Professor R.T. Bofu, and the college leadership, her colleagues, friends present here this afternoon. It also gives me great pleasure to also welcome and acknowledge Prof. Khumalo's family members in attendance. I acknowledge and welcome Prof. S.R. Malefane, who's the chair of the Department, Public Administration and Management in the College of Economic and Management Sciences here at UNISA, who will be our respondent this afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, as I take this opportunity to welcome you all to the University of South Africa, please, I welcome you at a time we are subjected to stringent COVID-19 pandemic regulations that have also made this inaugural lecture take a different shape altogether. We appreciate, though, that we have now relaxed conditions, but that does not necessarily mean we should relax and lower our guards against this pandemic. COVID-19 has caused havoc in the way we do things. The year 2020 will go down in history as a year which defined the new normal. Unfortunately, this COVID also disrupted our economies globally and placed significant strain on our social systems, and lest we forget the loss of life across the world. We as UNISA, of course, we were not spared. We have lost staff and students, more importantly, family members and friends. Of major concern with COVID-19 pandemic was the impact it has on our ability to deliver services to our students. We provide study materials and access to our learning centers across the country, but due to the COVID-19, we have not been able to do so for most part of 2020. And this has caused substantial grief from our students. We have, through our learning management system, managed, though, to deliver both learning content and assessments in ways unimaginable. Our technology saved us and our students the extended academic year. Though these actions have helped, it does not mean these efforts were without challenges. You all know that UNISA is the longest existing dedicated and the largest distance education institution in the world, founded in 1873, which next year will be turning 150. We cater for the student population that is equivalent to 1/3 of all South African higher education institutions, and we constitute more than 90% of all the students enrolled in distance learning programs. Historically, this university is perhaps the only university in South Africa to have provided all people with access to education, irrespective of race, color, or creed. Today, also, we should appreciate, we also pride ourselves for having the first woman principal and vice chancellor in 149 years. This is indicative of our efforts to ensure that UNISA continues to be the transformative university in the service of humanity. As a comprehensive university, open distance and e-learning institution, we are guided by the principles of lifelong learning, student-centeredness, innovation, and creativity. Because of CODEL, we contribute to the knowledge creation, advancement of humankind, and development of a critical citizenry to advance global sustainability. We achieve this through our learner-centeredness approach, which provides for lifelong learning in a flexible learning environment through interactive learning materials, thereby increasing access into higher education for most disadvantaged learners. We also pride ourselves in the development and promotion of our own staff so that they can continue to support our students and the communities around us. We are very grateful that this inaugural lecture is taking place within the context of our renewed spirit, in the context of our revised UNISA 2030 strategy and our strategic plan. In some ways, Prof. Khumalo's inaugural lecture has come at the right time. It is the time for the serious consideration of transformation ideals within the context of UNISA, our higher education sector, but also South Africa as a whole. We are proud that today, UNISA continues to demonstrate the value of a strong cadre of professorship that is necessary to instill in our students critical thinking and analysis of the highest order. This is a very proud moment for every academic as it reflects one of the pinnacles of academic achievement. It gives us great pleasure that our rank of full professors is growing substantially, and we are of the view that such will grow our research expertise in leaps and bounds in South Africa, in our continent, and the world. Ladies and gentlemen, in terms of today's proceedings, Prof. Mogale will introduce Prof. Khumalo and invite her to the podium, after which Prof. Malefane will then follow Prof. Khumalo with a response without any further announcement. I shall now invite Prof. Mogale to the podium.
Vice Chancellor and Principal of the University of South Africa, Professor Pule Nlenkabula, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Strategic Risk and Advisory Services, Professor Ndlovu, Deputy Executive Dean of the College of Economic and Management Sciences, Professor Mpofu, Directors of schools and chairs of department within the college, other leaders from various formations, including student leadership, family and relatives of Professor Khumalo, distinguished guests, good evening and welcome to this important event. Prudence Khumalo is a professor in the Department of Public Administration and Management at the University of South Africa. He has published on public policy and development, leadership, environmental governance, poverty, human settlement, and local economic development. He has presented papers at both local and international conferences. He is part of the African Union UNISA Agenda 2063 research group, and his sub-project focuses on human settlement development prospects in the continent of Africa. Professor Khumalo serves as a program coordinator for the Human Settlement Program in the department and has contributed immensely to the study of human settlement and was part of the team that worked towards the launch of the B.Admin Human Settlement Management degree in 2015. Professor Khumalo has to date successfully supervised 7 doctoral candidates and 4 master's students. He has published several journal articles, book chapters, and conference papers. He is a reviewer of a number of journals and examines master's and doctoral theses for 11 universities in and outside of South Africa. He is a Senate member of the university and serves as an external council member for Sidibeng TVET College. He is a member of the South African Association of Public Administration and Management, SAPAM, the Association of Southern African Schools and Departments of Public Administration and Management, ASADPAM, and the International Conference on Public Administration and Development Alternatives, IPADA. He holds a doctorate degree in public administration, University of Fort Hare, a master's in public administration, same university, and a BSc honors in human settlement and human resource management from Midland State University. Prior to joining the academia, Professor Khumalo worked as a human resource practitioner for Dunlop Tires. He received special awards and has been recognized for his academic work in the university and in the College of Economic and Management Sciences. College of Economic and Management Sciences, Doctoral Student Supervision Award, he got it in 2020. an Omni Award for Integrating Tuition, Community Engagement and Research, College of Economic and Management Sciences in 2015, an African Union grant to carry out research on human settlement policy in Africa in 2017. His topic for presentation today is entitled Exploring Human Settlement Development in Africa, Situating Local Economic Development at the Center of Sustainable Human Settlement. It is now my pleasure to welcome Professor Prudence Khumalo to ascend to the stage and to deliver his inaugural address.
The Vice Principal, Strategy, Risk and Advisory Services, Professor S.K. Ndlovu, the Dean of the College of Economic and Management Sciences, Professor M.T. Mohale, the Chair of the Department of Public Administration and Management, Professor S.R. Malifani, colleagues, family and friends, a good evening to you. Thank you for being part of this special occasion in my academic journey. I would like to acknowledge a lot of people that have contributed to the success of this journey. However, because of time, I'll be limited to just a few. First and foremost, I'm so grateful to God for the grace that has seen me through my studies to a point now that I'm able to contribute to humanity through research and development. In this journey, colleagues, I've received mentorship. In this journey, I've received support. And I want to appreciate my mentors. Firstly, Professor D.R. Takati, who was my master's and PhD supervisor. He did not end there. He has continued to be a pillar of support in my journey. And I'm so grateful to have sat also at the feet of one of the prolific scholars that I've met, Professor Sabelo Kacheni Ndlovu. It's been such a great experience to learn from the best. And I'm so grateful, Prof, for all your support. The reflection that I'm going to be doing this evening, ladies and gentlemen, comes from the collaboration between our institution, UNISA, and the African Union Commission. And I'm so grateful this evening for the support that have been rendered by the African Union and the university. Of special mention is Professor Raphael Mpofu, who has been the leader of this research group. Thank you, Prof, for the opportunities that you have given us to share our research in different platforms. I've learned a lot from colleagues who are pursuing different research and coming from different disciplines in the Blue Economy and Agenda 26.3 research group. And colleagues, thank you so much for the support. To my colleagues from the College of Economic and Management Sciences, especially the Public Admin and Management family, thank you so much for your support. I've been able to achieve this milestone this evening because of the support of a sound family, and I'm so grateful to family and friends for the companionship and the encouragement along the way. Tonight, my reflection is centered on the project that I've been working on in the continent, which explores the human settlements development. And my interest is to situate local economic development at the center of sustainable human settlements. Colleagues, my presentation outline is as follows this evening. I'll look at the introduction, I'll go to the aims, and look at the human settlements challenges on the continent and the threats that that may hinder the realization of SDGs. I'll look at the current trends and the critical factors. And at the end of this presentation, I'll highlight some policy directions and the opportunities that the work that I'm doing presents. As a way of introduction, perhaps I may need to define what I'm talking about. What are human settlements? Human settlements simply refer to a cluster of dwellings of any type or size where people live. It entails the totality of human community with all the social, material, organizational, spiritual, and cultural elements that sustain it. And it speaks to human dignity. Human settlements are very critical in terms of human dignity. They also speak to issues of economic development, economic progress. Where one lives determines what they have access to. It speaks to health and prosperity. And it is critical that we focus on this subject because it has a direct link to the realization of the SDGs. And I've highlighted here about 6 of them where human settlements will have a big impact in as far as the different countries are striving to attain the 2030 goals for sustainable development. Number 1, human settlements, they address the question of poverty. They also speak to issues of quality education. As I highlighted previously, the approach to human settlements was so much centered on housing. However, with time, there's been a realization that we need to address the totality of a human being, which speaks to social, which speaks to cultural, and other aspects. So human settlements address also issues of gender. SDG 6, which addresses the realization of access to clean water and sanitation. SDG 10 is also addressed through sustainable human settlements, which deals with reduced inequalities. And the 6th aspect that I looked at is the sustainable cities and communities. So human settlements, they speak to sustainable cities and human settlements. And by extension, addressing human settlement issues indirectly speak to other aspects of the SDGs. For example, peace, justice, and strong institutions. Without gender equality, without addressing poverty, our peace and our stability is under threat. But this study is in the continent of Africa, therefore it was important for me to have a look at the aspirations of the continent, the Africa that we want. And one of the priority areas for the first 10 years of the Agenda 2063 looks at modern and livable habitats and basic quality services. And as a result of this focus, if this is to be realized, it is also linked to SDGs. If this is to be realized, there has to be a concerted effort in the drive to create access to adequate human settlements. But what are the aims of this project that I'm engaging on? Number 1, The study seeks to explore pertinent issues facing the African continent with regards to human settlements. It also seeks to develop a model for human settlements development and management that factors in the contextual realities and historical developments of the region. That speaks to the Africa that we want. It also seeks to establish current state of human settlements in Africa, focusing on challenges facing national governments in addressing the ever-mounting complexities of human settlements. And the study also seeks to underline the significance of human settlements development in as far as Agenda 2063 and the realization of the SDGs is concerned. So my objectives is to establish the state of human settlements in the continent, build concrete resource on human settlements in the continent, propose strategies for Africa to tackle human settlements issues effectively. In other words, the intervention should be sustainable. The intervention should have optimum impact in the lives of the people. To develop, fourthly, it seeks to develop possible policy guidelines on human settlements for the continent. What are some of the challenges that are impacting the realization of sustainable human settlements in the continent? Number one, there is a need to relook at the question of housing and accompanying services in the African cities, because currently a number of people are living in squalor conditions. Africa is the fastest urbanizing continent. The trends show that in the early 80s, 28% of urban population, and in 2018, 40% of the urban population, 28% of the urban population lived in informal settlements, conditions of vulnerability, zones of conflict, zones of lack of opportunities. So the issue of perpetual informal settlements and homelessness needs urgent attention, and comprehensive solutions have to be developed. About 30% of world slum dwellers, which is about 238 million, are in sub-Saharan Africa. I've put up some of the images there that indicate some of the serious challenges that are facing people in the continent as far as housing and human settlements are concerned. In the picture that we're looking at, we see some people who are living in what is called in Cairo the city of the dead. What happened here is that because of lack of access to housing and adequate human settlements, some people have resorted to live in tombs. And that defeats the strides to give human dignity, to give humans opportunities. Stats showed that by 2013, about 2 million people in the city of Cairo lived in tombs. So people had to improvise and settle among tombs and live without access to amenities and facilities that should sustain human life. And again, besides the question of access to housing, we have a challenge in African cities of urban decay. you go to any big African city, yes, whether it's Joburg or whether it's Lagos, you see dilapidated buildings. And in the picture that I've lighted there, we see urban decay in the city of Cairo, where about 25 million people live. So there are improvisions in terms of structure on top of tall buildings in the city of Cairo. And that makes these people very vulnerable to elements such as lightning, because this is an improvision right on top of a big structure. There's no protection whatsoever against issues like lightning. And besides the urban decay, which needs urgent attention, we are still dealing with the problem of poverty, the triple tragedy of poverty, unemployment, and homelessness. More than half of world's poor live in our continent, and by 2015, more than 413 million lived on less than US $2 a day. How this is possible is beyond my imagination. So this group of people cannot afford adequate housing from the housing market. Hence, they have to resort to some improvisions in the form of informal settlements. So these areas become areas of vulnerability as depicted in that image there, which shows side by side a slum and a new development. And in between, there's a river running there. And in that river, there are a lot of plastic litter that has been thrown in. So the tragedy here is that the conversation I had with the residents is that during the rain season, this river floods and some of the structures are taken by the water. So these people have to start afresh and construct new shelter. So they get exposed to the weather elements. And besides the question of whether their children are exposed to the contamination of water bodies. So they are exposed to risk of waterborne diseases. And aqua life suffers due to the litter that is thrown in these rivers. Africa has of late experienced rapid weather disasters in the form of cyclones, like the one that affected Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Malawi, and part of UKZN. And of late, beginning of this month, we have had reports in South Africa here, where in KwaZulu-Natal, a number of people died because of flooding, and some people have been also affected by floods in the Northwest province. So there is also a risk. This poses a risk to sustainable human settlements, because in the case of flooding, in the case of these weather hazards, these people have to be displaced. And normally informal settlements are found in low-lying areas that are susceptible to flooding. And the continent has not been spared of conflict that displaces people. And this also is a challenge to realization of sustainable human settlements. The efforts by the continental body to silence guns has not yielded the much needed results. Guns have not yet been silenced. Just next door in Mozambique, there is conflict taking place there, and thousands of people are being displaced. So these are the challenges that are affecting human settlement development in the continent. I also want to just look at some trends that are quite definitive in terms of the challenges that we are faced with as a continent. Stats shows that by 2050, world's urban population will nearly double. And therefore, urbanization is one of the 21st century's most transformative trends. And by 2030, 6 out of every 10 people in the world are expected to reside in urban areas. And over 90% of this growth is taking place in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America, and in the Caribbean. And in the absence of urban planning, consequences will be dramatic. So this evening, colleagues, I want to look at the importance, the vitality of all local economic development in addressing some of the challenges that have bedeviled the effort to realize human settlements in the continent. LED, by definition, it entails working together of local actors towards economic development to realize sustainable economic growth and development with an aim to increase the economic capacity and enhanced quality of life for all residents of a locality. Sustainable human settlements, therefore, should have a strong LED leg as one of its key pillars. And the key aspects of LED that should be featured in the efforts to realize human settlements development, to realize sustainable human settlements would include a strong bottom-up decision-making. It has to be, the development has to be local stakeholder-driven. It has to also encompass civil society, the public and private players. So there's a need, therefore, for joint design and implementation of strategies unlocking the economic potential of the local area, factoring the competitive local resources. And at the end of the day, the aim is to also create jobs and sustainable economic activities. It cannot be just houses handed out to people, but there has to be that active participation in terms of decision making, in terms of contributing resources to the development. So the aspect of LED can be demonstrated in one of my case studies, which is a laboratory that I'm working on in the city of Nairobi. This is the case of a Kibera slum in Soweto East. In this case, there were people living as part of the bigger Kibera slum, which has about 200,000 people who do not have access to sanitation, who do not have access to clean water, and the infrastructure is inadequate, no access roads to some places. So as shown in that picture there, I was standing close to a movie shop. And if you look at the appearance, it's really pathetic. But these people do not have anything better than that. So they to gather there to watch the continental soccer tournament. So what it said to me is that there is potential, there are efforts that the residents are making. However, there has to be that concerted effort to work together and ensure that this local economic development potential is optimized. So this case of Kibera, this is some of the strides that they have made. 822 households, about 5,000 people have been accommodated in the high-rise structures that were built right in the slum. People didn't have to be moved, and this has helped them to keep their clientele in terms of those that are doing business. The new house owners, this is quite critical, the new house owners contributing certain amounts towards their housing. For example, for a one-room apartment, they pay about 300 shillings. It's not much, especially when you equate it to a rand, because it's about 13 cents. 1 shilling is about 13 cents in South Africa. So it's not much, but for people who are living in slums, it's big. And they are making this contribution as an arrangement, the rent to buy arrangement in the new development, in the new project. And for a two-roomed apartment, they pay about 4,200. And for the bigger space, for bigger families, they pay about 6,500, which is about 3 bedrooms. The importance of stakeholder participation was very key here, where they came up with what is known as the Settlement Executive Committee, composed of different sectors of the community. You have women, you have youth, you have the government reps, and the good thing is it is led by members of the slum. And this has seen some form of sustainability, and it has also helped. The conversation that we're having with the different stakeholders indicated that there was a sense of ownership from the community, unlike the previous efforts where people were handed out, were given houses without making any contribution, without deciding what type of houses they were to receive. And it was important that they used high-rise building because of the limitations of space. So these are some of the lessons that we're picking from this case, which I would want to really convey. Locally available skills were utilized in the process, creating some extra income, which is good for local economic development. And also it developed skills of the local youths. And also there's been an agreement that any development that is taking place in this space has to utilize locally produced materials. And the participation of outsiders, the participation of non-governmental organizations, the World Bank, and other development partners has really helped in terms of the resource space for this community. And one of the important aspects that came out from this project is that there was a sense of transparency in the whole project, and conversations with the people who were yet to benefit from similar projects showed that they were very happy with the development. They didn't feel cheated in a way that they were not first online. They trusted the process, which is very rare in most developments that have taken place in slums. So key to this project was the question of transparency. So in terms of local economic development, there is a need, therefore, to build the infrastructure because the road network was quite bad. So for them to receive, because there are tourists that are visiting their place, but access is still a challenge. On the image that I've flighted, we're seeing there some business stalls that are just outside the complex where these high-rise buildings have been erected. But where in terms of policy policy implications, I submitted a policy brief. One of the approaches that we are taking in this project is to communicate with different stakeholders, and we try to reach as many as we can. And one way of doing so is to try and disseminate our information in user-friendly packaging. So we have come up with policy briefs to reach people who are in the policy space. So in 2018, submitted a policy brief which looked at the drive to rethink informal settlements in the Global South, imagining a new approach of tackling informal settlements. It draws from one of the publications that have come from this work. And some of the policy directions that we come up with in this project is that there has to be a review of land use management. There has to be a review of the outdated and restrictive policies that do not serve the ends of inclusive development, a need to rethink an African city. What is an African city? It has to factor in the contextual and historical cornerstones of the people in Africa. The applicability of new building technologies. We have to think around innovative building technologies that will fast track the provision of adequate housing, and also think around energy sufficient human settlements. For example, the issue around solar harvesting and storage. There has to be a way of tailor-making human settlements to cater for different people groups, especially those that are differently abled. Another policy area would deal with issues of energy that is sufficient, that will deal with issues of improving the rural economies to allow citizens a choice. So there has to be a way of creating that choice by developing the non-urban areas. It should be a choice to go to the city. It should not be a question of being pushed by the non-availability of services, the poor standard of living. So, ladies and gentlemen, there are quite a number of things that we have come up with in terms of dealing with policy issues in the space of human settlements development. But one of the things that we are driving at is to create a sharing platform where different experiences, different successes in the continent can be easily accessible to other member states, even for cross-pollination of ideas. The study is ongoing, and to date, there are quite a number of findings that have been disseminated in terms of journal articles, like the ones that we are seeing there flighted on this slide, book chapters that have come from this work. I may not have time to really speak to all of them, but they all contribute to the policy directions that I've alluded to. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being part and parcel of this commemoration of my attainment of professorship. Thank you so much for taking time to celebrate with me once again. It has been a long journey, but it has been made easier by the support that I've received from a lot of you that have joined me this evening. Thank you so much. God bless you.
Good evening. I'm Professor Malefane. I am Chair of Department of Public Administration and Management, and our department is situated within the College of Economic and Management Sciences. And I also, like my friend and colleague, Prof. Khumalo, acknowledge Prof. Ndlovu, who is the Vice Principal for Strategy, Risk and Advisory Services in UNISA, as well as the Executive Dean of the College of Economic and Management Sciences, Professor Mohale. I, in particular, want to acknowledge the speech that's just been given by Professor Khumalo, who is my colleague. And he was talking about two most important topics in the discipline of public administration, human settlements, and local economic development. So these topics are very, very important to public administration because they actually carry the mandate of what government has to do, that is to create the livelihoods as well as the wealth in communities and in the society. So they carry out actually the most basic mandate of government of taking care of members of the society. And the manner in which we're talking about in recent times, we're focusing such kind of government functions on impoverished communities that are also said to be vulnerable and that are also experiencing various sorts of problems that affect them. And in this case, Professor Khumalo was talking about the case of Kibera. And if you look at the case of Kibera, it's not much different in comparison to what we are experiencing in South Africa in as far as development is concerned. Kibera, one can say that it shares much of the development features of our South African townships, wherein there is problems such as densification, and as a result of spaces in which people are unable to, they are not allocated those things. In response to that, government has tried quite a number of initiatives, but unfortunately we are unable to realize a state in which we are able to keep numbers in those localities. So at the end, they end up being densely populated, and as a result of being densely populated, there is no privacy within homes, and as a result, they end up being unsafe. Means that quite a lot of crimes are taking place in those areas. So I would say to Prof. Khumalo that I do agree with your explanation and your definition of the problems that are being experienced in Kibera. But the same is also happening in South African townships. And I also acknowledge that, yes, a concerted efforts by different countries in Africa would help, alleviate some of these problems to an extent to which we are able to maintain a happy communities and a society. Yes, in terms of, Prof. Khumalo's contributions, he teaches a number of selected modules as primary lecturer within the Department of Public Administration, and he participates in the community engagement activities that relate to the Western municipalities. He's a member of the Management Committee of the department, as well as the coordinator of the Human Settlements Program. He is as well a member of the SAMS Blue Economy Research Group. And I'm thinking that also explains his interest on human settlements as well as on local economic development. We have had quite a number of discussions that do emanate from his contribution in the department. And one of the things that we've been talking about lately is the institution of the short learning program that focuses on local economic development. We've also spoken about the short learning program that focuses on human settlements. And with this particular short learning program, we also trying to build capacity in local government institutions, to know exactly what is it that is expected from them and the role that they are going to be playing. We have also been speaking about the review of our local government program, and the manner in which we are talking about that was with respect to building capacity for local economic development. So we have been saying this as part of trying to infuse local economic development into this program. And in the department, as we speak, there are also some discussions that relate to us hosting a symposium that is going to focus on local economic development recovery strategies in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic. And we are planning to conduct this or to host this symposium, which is going to be followed by a number of workshops and potentially a conference at the end of, let's say, 2023. I have tried to localize the Kibera situation. And I have highlighted a number of factors that Professor Khumalo has highlighted in his discussion, especially those that relate to migration, that relate to urbanization, and informal settlements, increased poverty, and the rates of unemployment, as well as inadequate housing, homelessness, vulnerability, and adverse weather conditions and conflicts. These are similar problems that are being experienced in South African local government, particularly in our own municipalities. And what we have witnessed is that they are always followed by what we call service delivery protests that Prof. Khumalo referred to as conflict. So these service delivery protests are being experienced in localities in which there are dissatisfactions about the state and the pace of government delivery, more especially delivery by municipalities of basic services. And these discussions about service delivery protests are actually emanating from the inability of municipalities to deliver in time or proactively. And as part of localizing this topic is that, as South Africa is a member of various international organizations, subscribes to various treaties that are being subscribes to various international treaties such as the Sustainable Development Goals. We do have set national standards that municipalities and all government institutions are aspiring to deliver. And therefore, both human settlements as well as local economic development, they also form part of, the national standards on which South Africa is set to achieve in the future. A discussion of human settlements and local economic development is consistent with international developments. Human settlements development is a public service, and it's actually a basic right to which citizens are entitled. Local economic development is a government initiative, and in this case, Professor Khumalo is using it as a vehicle towards achieving certain policy outcomes, and those are to improve the livelihoods of citizens or to improve the wealth of members of communities. So whilst then government is delivering on its mandate of human settlements, they would also be able to achieve certain indirect outcomes. Like, for instance, when we're talking about local economic development, we'd always refer to the creation of jobs and skills development, for instance. So it becomes necessary that a discussion on both these topics then becomes relevant to public administration and more especially the roles of local government in South Africa and in Africa. When we're speaking about local economic development, we always make reference to multiple stakeholders, such as the role players from national governments, the role players from provincial governments, from the private sector, from the non-government organizations, and community business organizations, in which they play a very important role. So, together with human settlements, local economic development, they are a shared responsibility. When one is talking about human settlements as well as local economic development, there would always be that area in which we're talking about multiple role players from various sectors, from different spheres of government, including in municipalities. Municipalities are therefore going to be playing a very important role in as far as these two are concerned. Although we refer to local economic development as a local initiative, it then is considered as a local initiative, but the role is played by multiple stakeholders, some of them who are from national government, from provincial governments, from other sectors of the economy, such as the private sector, and from local government. In terms of current developments in South Africa, there has been quite a lot that has been done, in order to deliver on the two mandates. That is the mandates on human settlements as well as on local economic development. And these developments bears remembrance of what is happening in other African countries, like for instance in Kibera, in Botswana, in Lesotho, as well as in Zimbabwe. There has been quite a lot that has been focused on developing policies, the promulgation of legislation that governs both these topics, that is human settlements and local economic development. And at the national sphere of government in South Africa, which is similar to all these countries that I've mentioned, some of, or most of the initiatives are evident in departmentation. And some of the departments that have been created and some of them that have been configured in order to help government to deliver on human settlements are the Human Settlements Department itself, and because of the integration that has to happen there, the mandate of the Department of Water and Sanitation has been configured, and in as far as economic development is concerned, there has been a number of state departments at the national sphere of government that have been created. For instance, those that focus on local, not on local, but on economic development, and for instance, trade, industry, and competition, as well as departments such as the small business development. In provincial departments of government, there is also similar initiatives that have been initiated, and in addition to what is happening at the national sphere of government, we have provincial departments of economic development that do also have developed, policies that are consistent with national legislation. In local government, yes, we do have, although at a very small scale, because of lack of resources, they have created local economic development units, both at municipalities, category A, B, and C, in district municipalities, and in category B municipalities. And one of the latest developments that has been taking place was the creation of local economic development agencies. And you have in other municipalities, like for instance, the ones that do have enough resources, like the city of Johannesburg, where other means such as the creation of certain companies to initiate on certain projects have been created. So where there is quite a lot of progress, it's always associated with the amount of resources that are available, to those institutions. In concluding this response, I have created a number of, or a list of, points that need to be taken into consideration. And these factors need to be considered in that, if they are not considered, they have a potential to slow the implementation process and may possibly lead to the failure and the inability to deliver according to the national standards of delivering on human settlements as well as on local economic development. Despite these factors being eminent in South African conditions, they will also apply to other countries that I spoke about earlier. And the most worrying factor here is that of competence over human settlements development. In South Africa, we do have legislation that bestows certain functions on public institutions. And even though certain functions have been bestowed on municipalities, as I've said, they do not have the resources, to deliver on those functions. They are unable to deliver merely because of lack of resources, and in certain instances, lack of capacity, such as, for instance, for fundraising. So the competence for human settlements has not been shared across all municipalities. It also goes through the process of accreditation in which they are being given that mandate. And therefore, those that do not have the necessary requirements or that do not have the necessary capacity, they have not been accredited to deliver on that. Well, in South Africa, we have the capacity and the knowledge for housing development, not human settlements. And the third one that I've mentioned, we have witnessed, more especially during this COVID-19 pandemic, most of our municipalities are turning into a crime scene. There is quite a lot of resources that could have been spent on delivering services to members of communities, but this money is then deviated into corrupt activities and fraudulent activities. There is also lack of capacity in municipalities themselves to perform, that is to deliver according to their predetermined goals. And there is lack of local economic development capacity in most municipalities. In South Africa, we do not have a formal qualification that focuses on local economic development. It's actually being studied as part of local government. But, as they proceed, some of these students, they are unable to specialize on local economic development, merely because it is a new initiative that came about from 2000 in South Africa. And as such, because of lack of knowledge on local economic development, we have municipalities that have been obscurely structured, and as such, they are unable to implement local economic development effectively. And at the same time, we do have failure of intergovernmental relations. Most government institutions rely on private sector companies in order to deliver their own services. Although we're talking about tenders through which we expect that there is skills development that is going to be transferred, but it doesn't happen that way. Well, in conclusion, on behalf of the Department of Public Administration and Management, I congratulate Prof. Khumalo for achieving the highest academic rank of professor. And I say to him that the success of the department and the discipline is in the hands of people like you. And I hope that in your space, you will take the opportunity to advance academic discourses that will support the success of the academic project. And in the same breath, I thank the leadership of UNISA and the College of Economic and Management Sciences for the support that they are giving to the department. And I'm saying congratulations to Prof. Khumalo, and thank you very much to everyone.
Madam Principal and Vice Chancellor, members of Council and Senate, members of our academic community, our students, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the University, Council, Senate, and the leadership, please join me in officially welcoming Professor Prudence Khumalo to the ranks of full professor at the University of South Africa. Prof. Khumalo, thank you very much for the complex, instructive, and provocative lecture. It comes at an opportune time as we are engaged in curricular deliberations and transformation. We as UNISA pride ourselves as the African university shaping futures in the service of humanity. On behalf of the university, management, and our Senate, I congratulate you on having achieved this academic milestone. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of this afternoon's proceedings. Considering that we are doing this lecture online, I am sure you have planned for the celebrations of this day wherever you are. Thank you very much, and all be safe. Thank you.